Good evening, this is the Town of Raleigh Finance Committee for
intent monies to cover 6 hours of our secretary's 16-hour position, who provides an essential service to preparing documentation and specifically addressing the minutes and other type of paperwork that is necessary for any full-fledged government bureaucracy to provide. If the committee would allow me, I'd like to submit some information because I understand there could be some educational effort directed at talking about the Wetlands Protection Act fund and fees that are set aside for the Commission's utilization for administering and enforcing the Wetlands Protection Act. May I submit
sure. Go right ahead.
information? Thank you. Thank you. This document is from a handbook that was produced by the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions. So you see some of its verbiage is directly related to them supplying some perspective to that. They're a nonprofit association that supports all 351 cities and towns in the Commonwealth of Conservation Commissions, and they assist us with educational efforts in the commissions appropriately discharging their responsibilities under the Wetlands Protection Act. I would like to also specifically talk to the Finance Committee in regards to other monies which are not necessarily aggregated under a specific account, which you may not be aware that the Conservation Department generates in their discharge of their responsibilities under the town's Wetlands Protection Bylaw and the Stormwater and Erosion Control Bylaw. For example, because the fees generated for applications submitted under those two bylaws do not go to any type of dedicated fund that's set aside, they are deposited directly into the general fund for the town. So they actually provide a stream of monies that are generated solely by the initiation of an application submitted to the Conservation Department, i.e. those applications take effort, review, and time, administrative time and staff time to look at. So there is a fee structure in place to help offset the fact that those applicants therefore are utilizing town services provided by the staff in our department. For example, from August 14th, 2017 to the last date I made a deposit in response to an application filed February 26, 2018, Wetlands Protection Act Notice of Intent monies amounted to $4,590. wetlands protection bylaw fees for the same time period amounted to $33,889.93. Stormwater and erosion control bylaw, that same period, applications and various submittals resulted in $3,000 being deposited to the general fund. So the Conservation Department, through its activities in protecting the natural resources for the town of Raleigh and also serving in their stewardship role for conservation land and open space, also generates monies which go into the general fund and are not at the specific oversight of the Conservation Department, but are in fact, since the conservation staff receives their wages and salaries from the general fund, there is an inflow as well as an outflow. We have no way of predicting this because it's generated by application submittals. So I can only give you the empirical data over a period of time to show you that there is other monies. The submittal I gave you, which goes into detail, reflects the fact that the monies from Wetlands Protection Act applications and submittals is specifically encumbered that it can only be used for duties of the Conservation Commission in regards to administering and enforcing the Wetlands Protection Act. And so the second page of the submittal gives you some examples of how that funding stream can be utilized. And it is set aside, and that is by, I believe, legislative act, or at least Department of Revenue criteria, or I think Bureau of Revenue, maybe. But those can be utilized in various means. The department currently utilizes some of those monies. I just went to the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions annual conference. The notice of intent monies paid for my registration and paid for my mileage going down to the conference, because the conference is solely focused on administrating and enforcing, understanding the regulations under the Wetlands Protection Act.
So those fees collected go into a separate fund?
Yes.
Okay.
That can only be
Right.
dispersed for administering and enforcing the Wetlands Protection Act.
Okay, and that fund isn't reflected in your budgeting or anything?
That is
Right.
correct.
Okay.
Right. But it is subject to separate accounting per Department of Revenue guidelines.
Right.
And it is also subject to that the commission votes to utilize those funds. I then approach the Board of Selectmen as the chief administrative body and seek their endorsement of that. And then upon that, the funds can be utilized. It does not have to go to town meeting.
Okay. Is this something new, or has this been going on for several years?
Decades.
Years.
Well, the guidance I have specifically from the Bureau of Accounts was issued February 1998, and it superseded a guidance from 1990.
Years.
I, in all honesty, have not been in the business that long to know whether that was the inception date or whether it started before that. But yes, it's been a long-standing practice. And that's what helps support, because you have to realize that protection of natural resources, in order for you to have a local board that is in tune with the local needs of the communities and the resources of the community, that they can make the judgment about protection and implementation of those rules and regulations, they obviously need to have some support of some resources. And so the application fees are split. There's a split between the State Department of Environmental Protection and the local Conservation Commission that gets the application. and rules and works on looking at whatever the review is that's necessary to judge regulatory compliance.
Okay.
Back to the budget. I think there's a
Yeah, no,
typo.
I saw that too.
Yeah,
No, he went up 200 on meetings and seminars, or went down 200, and he went up 200 on telephone. On the last page on expenses,
yeah, why did the telephone go up so much?
Because I apportioned it since the commission compensates me $25 per month for cell phone service because I do not have a town-issued cell phone.
Oh, okay.
I use my personal cell phone, and I realized that I hadn't extrapolated and done it more realistic. Those figures are more or less for guidance. They aren't specifically empirical, but they are an attempt to give you an approximation of how the funds are utilized for various activities.
and you were able to reduce your meetings and seminar workshop by 200? Is that because the other wetlands protection the bylaw allows you to use those funds? Because you went down 200 there
Yes.
to cover for the phone.
Yes.
Okay.
So you don't need, I mean, the 200 is okay, reducing
Yes.
it by 200.
Yeah, as of January, Brent's wages and salary were at $24,739 below budget. That's remaining, okay, which is still below his budget. And for the secretary, $3,795, which is in line with his budget. And then the expenses remaining were $853. So,
So we try to track them monthly, and the accounting department usually gives us a percentage figure.
right.
And so, again, I try to apportion it out so I don't get into a situation where I might possibly need to make some expenditure and don't have the resources available.
Okay. Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve the conservation budget.
I'll second the
Okay,
motion.
Sharon. Dennis, any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay. Budget is conditionally approved. Thank you.
very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for the information.
You're welcome.
Oh, just one other thing, as Columbo would say. You have a revolving budget? Is
I
that,
don't know what that is.
Revolving fund?
I do not have a revolving fund.
okay. I thought there was a,
Just the NOI.
okay. My mistake.
Could I
Yeah.
just jump in and ask a question? With the 50/50 split between the conservation and the DEP, how is that done?
Yeah.
Which,
I don't know why I thought.
how is that done? How is that kept track of?
There's a specific calculation that each application submittal has that as one of their submittal pages. They
Okay.
provide copy to the Department of Environmental Protection, plus as our review, in-house review in our office. We also go over their calculation because it's predicated on what the proposed activity is. Building a house has a slightly different fee than building a subdivision roadway.
Okay.
So we evaluate their submitted application and see if it matches up with how they've done the assessment. The Department of Environmental Protection, though, under their separate regulations for their fee structure, has it spelled out what the various categories are and what the monies are assessed for different categories. And then there's a split. I'm getting into minutia that you probably don't need to know. For some reason,
No, I'm just
there's a split
curious.
of $12.50 that goes to the local.
Because I work with the Department of
company.
Environmental Protection too, so I just was wondering how that works with the Wetlands Protection Act, okay.
Basically, two eyes. Someone from the state reviews the application submittal to see if they did the calculations correct, and we locally do a review as part of our overall review to hopefully make sure that, again,
Okay.
what they're applying for has been correctly calculated and the correct funds submitted.
Okay.
Brent, just out of curiosity, does the state have more stringent environmental regulations than the federal And
Can have-
does does the federal always overrule what the state does, or do you know?
I do not know, but I can offer a general assessment that just as in order for a local bylaw to be approved, it needs to be stricter than the state law. So our wetlands bylaw is stricter than the state Wetlands Protection Act. And I believe the Commonwealth of Mass Wetlands Protection Act is stricter
Than the
than
national.
wetland guidance through the federal level, which is administered by the Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay.
That's as much as I can really
That's fine.
say, because I
That's
mean,
fine. I was just wondering, sometimes, one is stronger than the other. Thank you.
Especially when you got Pruitt now, he doesn't believe in all these stringent regulations. and
Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you very much, Brent.
Thank you for your time this evening.
Okay.
And please, I hope you avail yourself to enjoying some of our premier open space, such as the Dodge Reservation or Hunsley Hills. Just give me a couple weeks to get rid of the down trees, but other than that, the trails are marvelous, and we hope you enjoy them.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next is Susan Hazen to discuss her budgets.
So as per the directive we received from the Board of Selectmen to be level funded, this budget is essentially level funded. The only thing, the item that went up was the price of stamps simply went up. The number of stamps I ordered didn't change, but the price went up to 50 cents. So that column, that line item changed. And there are simply 3 elections this year, and there was only 1 last year. I can't change that. We had 1 8-hour election last year. This year we have 1 2 13 hours. That simply is gonna raise the cost. I can't change that. We're mandated as to how many people we need at election. If only 3 people come to vote, I still need 8 people in the room, because that's part of the law. How many, I can't say, well, not many people are gonna come, so we'll cut down the staff. We can't do it. I will also say that, you all know that the federal government, legislated that there'd be early voting for November elections. So in November of 2016, we had early voting, which was essentially an unfunded mandate, which they are still talking about. We've done all kinds of paperwork, and they're trying to get the money for it, but no actual money, no check has been received at this point. But they are still talking about refunding portions of that. Only portions that when we would not normally have been open. It's very strict about what they'll reimburse. But curiously, this year, Secretary Galvin has now instituted legislation, which is just in the process, it hasn't been accepted yet, to allow 5 days of early voting in September for the September primary. The federal government never suggested it had to be for the primary, but Secretary Galvin must have thought the people were so enthusiastic about it that we should do it again. I don't know whether that's gonna pass. The good news is, 5 days would be Monday to Friday. And I only assume that from the formula from the last election. Well, I'm open Monday through Friday. So it would cost very little extra hours. There's no Saturday, there's no weekend.
Right.
That's within that. And I think I allowed 8 hours for both the September election and the November election of additional hours. The only way it would cost is if I opened hours that we weren't open. I won't work in the building by myself. That's not a good idea. It's not prudent to be here by myself, so I'd have to hire a warden, one of my election wardens, to come in and be another body in the building. So I think my calculations allow for 8 hours for either one of those elections, and I'm not even sure the September election legislation is gonna go through, but I have to be aware that that's on the horizon, and it could be. Better to be prepared and not need it than come back to you in September and say, well, now I
Yep.
need more.
Right.
Other than that, it's pretty much level funded.
On page 3, is that an error on the top?
I hope not.
Well, you got fiscal year
Yeah.
18?
Yeah, that's an
Like
error.
that.
And then the other one, 17 must be 18, I'm guessing.
So wait, you have one that says 18?
Yes, I was gonna say that too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's mine, yeah.
Is 16 and 17 correct, or is those, should those be 17, 18?
Yeah,
16 and 17, correct.
Those
So
are
I'm looking at the one that says town clerk salary and office wages, FY 18. It should say, first of all, FY 19. And then the second question is 16
No,
current.
the line just to the left of that. You get 16, 17, and then 18. I'm assuming that's 17, 18, and 19.
Would be the
Not
last-
important, but,
The last column to the right should be 19.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's so sad,
I've got some comments,
so
Susan.
sad.
On page one, I can give you my, I did this from home. I would delete where it says "and level funded expenses" because 3 of the expense lines actually show an increase. The office expenses go up a little bit, so do the registrar expenses, but the election expenses more than double, so that really is not true as far as the expenses being level funded. I'll give you this if you want.
Yep, no,
have it.
I,
And then on page 3, the numbers at the bottom do not match what you have on page 1. The
page
4,000.
3, tell me what the heading of
Page 3 is the town clerk expenses.
Yep.
The numbers for the columns 2016 and 17, the
Don't
4,074
match.
and 3,925.
I mean, this is just an excuse and I won't, this was my Saturday morning project, remember the?
Oh, no, I'm
remember
just
the
saying,
blackout?
from looking, yeah.
Actually,
So it became my Monday morning project with customers.
I'll
Actually,
give you
they-
this.
Actually, I think they do match, because if that, it's 3947 is what she wants for this year, for FY '19, and I see,
Right, but are they for the right year,
but
Joe?
all,
Because,
to the far right, it says 3940.
yeah, if something doesn't match, though, it's either the year or the amount.
Oh, it's probably the year.
If you look at it. And then on page 4, which is under the Board of Registrar expenses, the 2 numbers for FY 17 and 18 also don't match page 1. So everything else seems to match, though.
Yeah.
I'll just give you this, like I said, I printed this from
That's
home.
kind of a race to get it done on Monday.
But I figure if I'm going to vote on it,
No one planned on that blackout last week.
Okay, but the numbers on your top page are correct.
I believe so.
Okay.
Conservation Town Hall Annex, 39 Central Street.
This one here is what
Right
you're
over
saying,
here, take a right.
the top?
Yes, that's what she said is correct.
Okay, I thought he said the numbers weren't right on this page here.
I gave
So there
Susan
have
my
to be some
copy.
corrections made.
So, yeah,
You got this here.
but it looks like,
Want to see it?
No, I mean, you just, he's saying it's the same, but it's not, right?
right, I'm not questioning page 1 at all, so, but any of the other pages that follow should match, because it's a breakdown of what you have of page 1.
As I said,
but-
office expenses
they
and the
do.
registrar expenses, I
They
think
do.
the only reason it went up was the change in the price of
355
stamps.
is here,
Yeah.
then the 16,
Right.
what are you looking
So the
at?
bottom line,
Some
the
of these other
96.
numbers here.
590.
Yeah, I'm looking, look at,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was just
if
looking
you
at
want to
my,
see, I highlighted them,
The
yeah,
rest is
well, so
just
19's okay,
informational.
then you're saying the
So-
other years,
yeah,
okay.
like these numbers here, these.
Those match, yeah.
they're
I'll make a
fine.
motion to accept the town clerk's budget of 96,598.
So the biggest reason why the numbers increased appear to be the election wages. Oh,
Yeah.
what is, you counting another extra election or 2 extra?
2,
Next
going from one.
fiscal
Elections,
year,
yeah.
it will be the presidential, not the president, the state primary in
Right.
September,
Might be a
the state
presidential.
election in November, and the regular town election in May. So this
Okay.
current year's budget reflects 1 8-hour election. The next
Okay.
budget is gonna reflect 2 13-hour elections plus the 8-hour election.
Right.
Therefore, the price has to go up, and it's really more than 3 times, because it's not an 8-hour, they're apples and oranges.
Yeah.
And the state also requires testing, we have to test all the equipment, it's a good system, but I have to pay people to come in.
Is the hourly rate go up too, or is that stay the
The hourly
same?
rate went up to
It went up
2.25%, exactly.
20% too, okay.
Exactly as directed, yeah, they went up.
Yeah.
The only thing that didn't go up is the registrars, I didn't bring theirs up. But the rest of the salaries,
Wait, wait, see, okay.
registrars are a stipend as opposed to a salary.
Right. Okay, we have a motion to accept. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay. Conditionally approved. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
And moving right along, treasurer collector.
Okay, I actually have three budgets. I have
Right.
my treasure collector, the information services, and the debt. So, we can start with the treasure collector.
Okay.
Basically, the wages are in line with the guidelines. There is one exception on the wage. I do have an extra $350 budgeted. We had that budgeted this year because the administrative assistant works 16 hours a week. And there are times when the assistant treasurer collector and I both need to be out of the office for a meeting, for illness, and she needs to basically cover for us. It keeps us from having to transfer money at the end of the year, and it worked out well this year, so I've put that in again. The expenses are level funded. I have basically kept most things the same. I did have some increases which I offset in other categories. One of the things was our lockbox and online fees were a little bit higher in fiscal year 17 than we had budgeted for, and that means simply that more people are paying online. And in order to, encourage more people to pay online, we have several vendors that we use for that, so. And that's pretty much it.
On the
Yep, what?
wages,
Yep,
is there a mistake on the front page? I'm not sure. Under assistant treasurer salary, you got 45,
Right.
689, and it's really, should be 45, 938. You
Yeah,
forgot
this
to
one.
put the longevity in there?
oh,
45 versus on page 2.
Am I correct on that?
45,
Yes.
938.
Okay, so that just needs to be
yep,
adjusted, so that the bottom line should be 143, 497, I guess,
yes,
right?
you're right.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this one?
Let me see. I don't have any others. Any other questions? You want to see if we can do all three at once, approve them, or you
Sure.
want them separate? Okay, let's go on.
However you prefer to do it.
They are separate budget lines, so
Do they have to be done?
Okay.
Just vote them separately,
I'll make a motion to
Right.
approve the treasurer collector.
with the adjusted number,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Adjusted number.
I don't know what the bottom line is anymore, but
Okay, I have
I'll
a
second it.
motion, second. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, treasurer collector budget is conditionally
So,
approved.
The
with
next one,
adjustment.
the next one is the IS budget. Basically, that's level funded from last year. And, most of those expenses are for our outside contractor. We don't have any in-house IT support other than myself and Sue Bailey, who are the IS administrators. And other than fix Debbie's printer, that's about the
And they,
extent.
Help, they actually know that's a lot of technology because they do help with computers freezing up and we're really benefiting because having an in-house IT is quite expensive.
And we kind of triage things, we ask people to, run things through us, and we call the IT consultants, so, or people will at least ask permission, is it okay if I call them, I have this problem? So that's basically what most of that budget is, and, we really can't predict what's gonna break.
So the expenses are for the IT consulting?
Yes, they
Okay.
bill us on an hourly rate.
Okay, so it's per hour. Just out of curiosity, do you have or need any IT training or stuff?
I've got all that I need, thank you.
It looks like last year, you
It'll
had-
improve your mind.
it looks like last year they had, a surplus in expenses. about 29%.
Right.
So they didn't, you know, this.
Right, I mean, you know,
Yeah, you
we
need it
need
if
to
you
have
need
it there because we
Yep.
can't predict when things are gonna break, but,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we, you know, obviously, don't say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you know.
Do we lease or buy the computers or
We buy them.
printers? We buy them.
Basically, we buy them as part of the capital plans. And what happens is when, the Board of Selectmen calls for capital plans for the years, I sit down with Jared from PRS and we look at a list of all the computers. And, you know, we look at, the age of things and that really kind of designates, you know, what we have to replace because, you know, if Microsoft isn't gonna support, you know, Office, whatever anymore, then we can't really have computers running that. And we basically look and say, okay, well, you know, here's a list of what we need to replace. And we put that into the capital program and, you know, it's been working well.
That includes all the licenses that you need for
Yeah.
each computer.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So what happens is we buy a license for Microsoft Office with every new computer.
Are they computers replaced like every 3 years or 5 years or?
Probably 4 to 5 years.
I'm
You know-
just wondering.
It's the software really that, you know, runs the computer, the microchips and stuff like that, you know, maybe 4 or 5 years you need to upgrade so it goes faster.
Well, and what happens is with the cost of computers now, it's easier to buy new computers than
It
to,
is,
you know.
Yep.
So that's.
No, I was just wondering because like Triton leases their computers and they replace all their stuff like every 3rd year.
Right, right. I think they have a lot more computers than we do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Some towns have a mainframe, and all you have is just a desktop unit that goes to the,
Right.
that does all the work. I
Yeah.
don't know if that, have you looked into that, or is that?
Yeah, that's, you know, like, we're pretty small for that.
Yeah.
Plus, we have people in different locations. You know, we have a server here that takes care of, you know, like, basically our email, our file storage. So, in essence, the computers that we do buy don't have to have that storage capacity because, you know, we want everything backed up. So, you know, documents and things like that do live on the server, which is, you know, probably why the computers we buy are so inexpensive.
Well, the police
Relative.
department's gonna do that recording, I guess, or everything that we put out on the computers have to be stored somewhere for a period of 7 years.
Well, we have the server and we, you know,
Okay, so it stays on there
Yeah.
for.
we just.
Oh, that's Archive Social he's talking about.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Actually, we're gonna have a town budget line
Yeah,
in the IS budget, which will be
yeah, 'cause
revised.
that makes sense to do that.
I'll submit it when I
Yeah.
do the selectments. But it will be for any, we do have a number of town departments that have social media and, so we just do it for all the town departments that the fire department, library, council on aging.
So
Okay.
any other questions on IS?
Can I have a motion to approve the
I'll make a motion that we
IS?
approve
Okay.
the IS budget.
Paul? You have a
I'll
second?
second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, information services.
Okay, and
Now
finally,
to debt.
the debt. Basically, you know, the debt is the debt. You know, the schedule is what it is. There are some new things on this year. We had a capital article last year, and we did that borrowing, and we have, you know, the first year's payment of principal and interest for that. And the other thing that is new is we borrowed a portion of the money for the Pine Grove and, police and fire station. We borrowed 10 million this year, and you'll see those numbers reflected under principal and interest. And that is, 20-year debt, and is, hopefully, my plan is to not have to borrow anything again this fiscal year. But I have to go with the cash flow needs of the projects. So
What was the interest rate on that, on the 10 million?
it varies because it's, you know, it's layered over over 20 years.
Okay, so
There's
it's
some
not a
in each
fixed,
one.
it-
Well, it is fixed, but you know, what you paid for
Oh, yeah.
1 year is different than what you
Yeah, you
paid for
pay
5
high
years.
interest in the beginning and then lower at the end.
Well, no, what
No.
you do is you sell some bonds that are 1 year in maturity. You sell
Okay.
bonds that are 2 years, you sell, you know. But basically, when we ask the market to bid on them, they come back to us with a structure and they say, okay, I'll buy your debt at
Whatever, yeah.
this. So, you know, there's not really one rate. But what I can tell you is the debt service that you see on here is going to have an impact of 56 cents on the tax rate next year. I don't know about you, but I get questions about, you know, is the school on my tax bill? Is the fire station on my tax bill? And this will be the first that it is on the tax bill.
Part of it.
Part of it, right, exactly, 10 million worth of it. And depending on how the projects go, if we can keep our borrowing in a given year, $10 million or below, it's called bank qualified status, and what it does is it gives us an advantage in rates because it allows Massachusetts banks to bid on our debt. It's kind of a technical thing, and it's a nice, you know, it's kind of a goal. But like I said, we have to fund the projects as the cash flow dictates.
Karen, the Fed, I keep reading the Fed is expected to raise rates 3 or 4 times this year because of the strong economy. How does that impact our debt? Are we locked in at a certain percent for each of these
Yes.
for the entire
Yes, it-
duration?
Correct. So
Okay.
what happens is, it will not affect this debt, but it will affect,
New debt in
New
the
debt
debt in the
that we're-
future?
exactly.
Okay. So we got a lot of these projects in on pretty low rates, relatively
Yeah,
speaking.
Right, and, you know, in the next couple of years, we'll have some projects, that will be paid off. The landfill has, you know, 1 more year. After this one, the library has a couple more years. So those projects, you know, will be coming off, cause those were overrides. So those will be coming off the tax rate as the new debt goes on.
Okay.
And, you know, there's a lot of, you know, discussion about, you know, what's gonna happen with the new Fed chairman, and rates. And, you know, it's a question of, you know, how much of it is built into the market.
Yeah.
The rates on like the 10-year treasuries have been very high since August. They're up like 0.5 percentage point or something like that. So, the shorter part of the market, you know, seems to be, you know, less affected by the rate increases at this point in time. But, you know,
Yeah,
I
going forward.
don't have my crystal ball with me today, so.
Are these amounts too, do we pay these on a monthly basis, like a
No.
mortgage, or are they annual?
No, they're usually semi-annual. So what happens is, one semi-annual will pay one interest payment, half of the interest.
Okay.
And then on the other one, we'll pay the principal and the other half of the interest.
Okay,
And they vary at different times of the year.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Make the motion
Okay.
to approve the debt.
Okay, Sharon? No. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye? Thank you, Karen.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along. Library. Hello, Pam. Tell us about reading is fundamental.
Well, the library budget is much simpler than debt, for sure. The first page is the municipal appropriation requirement, which we calculate every year and we have to meet in order to participate in the state aid program. It is a moving target, so should anything else be appropriated into the budget this year, either as an emergency transfer or at a special town meeting? And then the other thing that could change the projected TAMI, total appropriated municipal income for this year, is the revolving account. But it's pretty close to this number, and should the numbers be approved as they are, we will meet the municipal appropriation requirement.
So your requested budget has to be, we'll say, equal to or greater than this calculation?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. And the number is calculated by taking your last 3 years' total appropriated municipal income, or the MAR, whichever's higher, and you find an average, and then multiply the average by 1.25%.
Okay.
I'm sorry, by 2.5%. Yes, 2.5%.
Right.
So the operating cost includes the salaries as well, right? Not just the expenses, right?
That's correct, yes. It includes, everything that's appropriated, so the expenses, the wages, the salaries, and then, as I said, the revolving account is included as well.
Yeah, that was my next question.
In calculating the wages and salaries increases, I follow the guidelines for the COLA and the step increases. I know that the request for expenses was level funded, but there are 2 unavoidable increases, again, specific to state aid and libraries. That's our network assessment, and I've included after the issues and options form, the actual formula that they use to calculate the network assessment across the 36 member libraries. It's based on your past year's usage of the system, traffic, circulation, purchases, how many total holdings you have. And that increased, I believe, 2%. And then the final increase is because the library has to spend 16% of its overall budget on materials, so any increases in any other lines also have to show an increase in the materials line.
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
Have you done the sprinkler testing and the automatic door? So I noticed in the budget closing at the end of the fiscal year, those 2 items were still unspent.
The sprinkler testing was done. The amount that's still in that line was an overage.
Okay, surplus.
Which I just
Okay.
gave Debbie an article today. We're gonna apply that to some building expenses we've had this year
Okay.
relating to the fire alarm system and the emergency lighting systems.
Is that the same thing for the automatic door?
The automatic door opener, we're rebidding it right now, and maybe we'll need more than that, but that's a pending project we hope to happen this spring.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And one other question, or at least for me, on your computers and all, are those purchased or do you lease those?
They're purchased. They're also in the
They're all-
town capital.
Okay.
And yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, have a motion to approve the library budget.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Dennis?
Second.
Any other questions, discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, approve your library. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Somebody may be missing a library, I got an extra library, yeah. Put that out there.
Okay, next is animal control. The budget's rather straightforward, but
Yeah, I don't think we're doing the budget tonight, are we?
Yes, we're gonna combine it basically.
Oh, okay.
We have the budget and the reserve fund transfer.
right. Which do you want to do first, the budget?
Well, I
or-
put it in order of, the agenda, the revised agenda. Reserve fund transfer.
Animal control, I guess is
And then the
first.
budget after.
So the increase on expenses was for the vehicle, I think, right? Extra
Fuel.
$500.
The fuel for the vehicle.
Fuel and oil.
Oil is important.
Yeah. Yeah, routine maintenance.
Yep.
Okay, so we do the transfer first. Okay.
I remember years and years and years ago, I don't remember who the animal officer was, but he got $365 a year, and then leap year, he got an extra $1.
I think when I came, it was Louis Moisen, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I was just thinking it might have been Louis.
might have been Louis. I always thought, Bill, he got the extra $1 on leap year.
Believe me, Reed isn't getting too much more than that.
No, I know he isn't, not with inflation.
Okay, does everyone have a copy of the transfer request? 21,000 for the truck? Yeah. Another question I had was, is the $500 increases in expenses, is that enough?
Yeah, in other words,
That's like,
Reed's
$10 a week, and I have a hard time running my stuff at $10. Yeah.
Well, Reed, it's just basically around town for the most part. And I don't know how much he was spending before
I don't know how much.
we picked a figure out of the air,
Yeah, well,
500.
I've been using my own vehicle
Right.
over vehicles for, I've been almost 20 years animal control, and I've dealt with other towns, so I would take my own vehicle, going to the towns, doing animal control in Danvers or Boxford, picking up, the animals. I've been using my own vehicle all these years. And that old poor truck of mine just died the other day in downtown Danvers.
Right.
Through a head gasket.
So basically, I think this is a guess. So if we need more, we'll, if Reed's running low at the end of the year, we'll just transfer some money and then give us a better idea next year exactly
Sure,
what we
what
need.
it takes.
So how much was the Nissan, was it 17 something?
Yeah,
you
we're
said?
talking, if we
17,900.
do the Nissan from Milford Nissan, it's $17,995. That's a king cab, not the doors, but the king size cab. They don't even make a small single cab anymore. If we wanted to get an American Ford, that was going to be Ford F-150 with a regular cab, not a large cab.
You'll need more than $500.
$19,453. So we, Board of Selectmen last night, we voted for the $17,995. That's a smaller truck, should be better on gas mileage.
And it's on gas, not diesel.
No, it's gas.
Gas.
Yeah, it's gas. And then we put extra money in there for a cap for the back.
Yeah, the strobes they're $1,000. I mean, that's for a cheap set,
Well, we got a price of up to maybe 2,000.
It could be up to 2,000, but you said you could get it at.
Well, I mean, I bought, the one I have on my truck, I bought that quite a few years ago down in downtown Ipswich at the auto place there. I forgot the name of it, Magnetic. I put it on and I had my mechanic hardwire it right in so I could, instead of just plugging it in with a cigarette lighter, it's in the house, in the truck, I can just hit the switch.
So, as long as you have enough money there, I mean.
Yeah, we're not looking for fancy, like the police cruiser or something like that, something, a small strobe light or.
And you probably need a spotlight or something.
They'll
too,
give us
I
a
would think.
discount. No, not really. It's just a basic truck, nothing fancy we'll get a light on it and the cap for the back. And we priced the cap out online because we couldn't get a price from the state bid list until we order it, then we get the whole
Okay.
package. But they give you 5% discount. And the highest cap was, that Natalie had priced online was about $2,000, so probably can get something a lot cheaper than that, so should be a sufficient amount of money. And
Okay.
basically, like Reed said, he's been, ever since I've been in town,
He's been doing
the
it.
animal controls use their own vehicle. We tried to see, Debbie checked around with other departments to see if anybody had a spare vehicle he could use. Nobody does, and nobody wants dead skunks and animals in their trucks anyway. And Carol LaRock, who used to be our animal control officer before Reed, and she's Reed's backup now.
Right.
Very nice, she lives in Newbury, and she has a vehicle. Almost every animal control officer around actually has a vehicle. She's been down, when Reed gets a call, he calls her, and she comes down and takes him where he needs to go, and so on and so forth. So we're at the point where the town's growing. These are some of the things that we really need to address. And the other thing is, if we need an animal control officer, if Reed doesn't have a vehicle,
You can't get that.
we're in trouble, and Carol can't fill in. She does Newbury, and I believe Newburyport too, so she's already stretched thin.
Newbury and Topsfield.
Newbury and Topsfield, so she's stretched thin. So, I mean, we gotta bite the bullet, and
Does he have a vehicle, personal vehicle to use for his personal use?
Not right
or-
now.
Not right now.
So is this gonna be used for personal use
he
as
can-
well?
around town, I mean, it's
Yeah.
gonna be limited. I mean, we're expecting, it's like the police chief or, the highway surveyor or whatever, if they have to use the vehicle, it's part of the package. I mean, obviously, Reed doesn't go too far.
Can we put permanent seals on there as opposed to magnetic seals?
What?
Put permanent seals on there versus magnetic seals? Just so that-
Lettering?
Yes.
Yeah, my intention would be to get it lettered. We'll check with the
Permanent-
highway,
permanent
yeah.
letters, not
Right.
magnetic things you
Could
can
be
take off.
probably a decal and
Yeah.
animal control or something on there, so, yeah. And it'll have the blue municipal plates.
Make a motion that we approve the transfer.
Okay, just a minute. You're satisfied, Reed, with the, with the truck and everything?
Well, he went over, I happen to have the same truck,
Yeah.
not quite this.
Oh, well, you can take his.
Reed
No.
sat
We'll buy
in
him a
it,
new one,
and was
Yeah.
happy, a new truck.
Okay.
He's gonna be like, a king driving around in that truck.
Okay.
You don't have air conditioning?
And this truck should last 10, 15 years. I mean,
Oh, easy, yeah.
this will be the last truck any of us will see should be for the animal control officer, unless he has an accident.
God forbid.
How many calls you get for animal control?
It varies.
I mean,
Since my truck is dead,
Yeah.
I've probably had a half a dozen, and that's in a week. Then I can go a couple of weeks without getting any calls. I had one the other day, a loose dog, found out who the owner was, go get your dog.
I mean, he has to take him to the pound, he picks up dead animals.
And,
He gets called, he's on a call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, basically, so.
have you got a call from a runaway horse?
I've had, yep,
Well, can that fit in that cabinet? So I was thinking if it's 6 feet, is that
No.
one?
no,
You know,
Well, plus, on top of that, Reed, he does the animal checks for barns and
yeah.
The
stable.
animal inspector job.
Animal inspector is out,
Yeah.
he has to go around and check all the barns and so on and so forth, so
It's with the
it's
state.
a fairly involved job, and I have to admit that we get a big bang for our buck, so
Yes, you do.
for the Board of Selectmen, we just felt that it was one way of rewarding him was
It
to
it
let him
can
have a
be a
truck.
pain in the butt job sometimes. You get that 2 o'clock call in the morning to go get that dog when they made the arrest.
So we're doing this in the middle of the year and we're taking it out of reserve. Is there any
Right.
way we can get that money back, put that back to bring it
Is
up
there
to
anything out of
75?
your reserve so far?
No.
No.
Because we increased it by 25,000.
Right.
It's up to
75.
75.
If it looks like we're gonna be short, we can add money in the springtime
So
meeting.
far, we've had no
Generally,
requests.
lately, the last few years, it's been, I think we bought a police cruiser one year.
Yeah, it's-
Right, and
Pretty
then,
much everything else has been,
how is the snow?
Part of the heating
How is the
system.
snow budget holding up? Is it probably
well, that
still
goes
under?
at the end
that's-
anyway.
I know,
Yeah.
but, well, that could be,
I don't know, I'm not sure what they are.
what we budgeted for could be less than what,
He can,
I don't
he
know.
can spend whatever he needs, and at the end of the year, we
Yeah, no,
transfer your
I-
money in, whatever's left, and if we have to, we take it out of.
next year's
But if
one.
you over budget, I don't know what the budget was, 300,000 or something?
Even though you have that January report, a lot of those contractors won't, be-
Yeah.
their bills would have
Yeah.
been coming in and
It's a
probably
moving
about
target,
now.
Yeah.
We're probably getting
Um,
pretty close to the.
Oh, we're over,
I think
according to the
we
January
over?
one, but
Okay,
Right.
Probably,
Yeah.
yeah, so.
a little bit.
At the end, whatever you have left in your budget normally is transferred to the snow account, and anything left is put on next year's, taken out of next year's free cash.
There's gonna be some plowing tomorrow.
Yeah, it sounds like
Yeah.
it's gonna be- hopefully that'll be the last snow. We
That's
are hoping we
the
already
problem. I
have.
used to always say when we had storms, it should be a blizzard, because the FEMA reimbursed the town for
Yeah.
a portion of it. These little storms like this,
No.
it's all paid by the town, there's no reimbursement at
The
all.
last couple of storms have been 2 inches and sand and so on.
Unless the governor declares an emergency,
It's a
right?
pain.
no.
Yeah, but he won't do that for.
You won't do
small
that.
amount of inches.
Not for this
Not
one.
for
anyway.
this.
If we had damage in the water, I don't know if we had, might be able to get some there.
Okay, have a motion to accept the reserve fund transfer from Sharon. You have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Thank you very much.
How long before he can get that?
Well, by buying it for the state, hopefully within a couple of weeks, we'll call the dealership
Yeah, we go through combines
Yeah.
now.
tomorrow, and if they, assuming they have a vehicle, and most of these companies now have a ton of these vehicles on their lot, so I wouldn't think it's more than a couple of weeks. Sooner the better.
Right.
We need to ride the Milford out.
Well, the biggest thing is gonna be the cab on the back.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll take a few days for them to prep it, if we get the cab. I'm less concerned about the yellow light or whatever, we can always do that after if we have to.
So is it, I mean, I'm just saying, is it worth it to get new versus used? I mean, 'cause trucks,
Oh,
they
yeah,
go
no,
down and, they go down in price a lot
It's-
after the first couple of
No,
years.
if you go around and look for a good used pickup truck,
Yeah,
you're gonna pay through the nose.
yeah.
And believe me, I got friends of mine that are looking, and, you know, this truck will last, like I say, as long as anybody here is working for the town of Raleigh, this truck should last. The highway department will get in 10 years, pretty close to 10 years out of those trucks, and they use them day in and day out for all kinds of stuff, so.
I mean, that little Ford of mine, that was a 98, you know, 20 years old, and it finally died.
Plus, I think if you don't buy it off the state bid list, you gotta go out and,
Yeah, we have to
have
have a
a,
generic spec and
yeah, spec it
go out to
out.
bid.
No.
Just time,
We
right now,
just don't-
time is of the essence.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have the time for it.
Needed.
Okay, let's move on to the animal control officer budget.
Make a motion that we accept it.
I'll second it.
Okay. Right now, he's below budget in the spending through January. Dennis and Sharon. Any discussion, further discussion on the animal control budget? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay. Moving on to animal inspector.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Sharon? Dennis?
Most of my expenses on animal inspector comes with rabies testing. And that's, you know, that's the biggest one right
Yep.
there. If we find, got a dog that no one claimed it, had to bring it to the vet, you know, we might have to pay the vet bill until we
Yep.
find the owner. If no one claims it, then we adopt the dog out, so.
Yep.
Right. The only question I had on the expenses, I think the fiscal year 18 appropriation was like $311.75, and the request probably should match that as well.
No, it doesn't, it was encumbered funds, that's from the accounting department. So
Okay.
She told me to just show it.
Okay, so the 200 is,
It was a
is-
17 encumbrance, you had,
okay,
Ipswich Animal Hospital, was it, or?
Yeah, I had a bill from Ipswich, either Ipswich
Yeah.
or Muddy Creek.
Because it took a while, or one of those.
Yeah, it was my mistake. I had a
So
bill.
that's encumbered, so it's showing on 18, but it was really money from 17.
okay,
That's what she said. So she said it would be easy to just show it.
all right, so
'Cause I
the
know
numbers
that's
are
on-
correct.
That's on her sheet, but and I called her about it.
Okay,
I did the budget for the week.
okay, let's see, we didn't vote on it.
No.
No, okay.
No, we didn't.
Any other discussion on it?
Nope.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Enjoy your truck.
I'd like to thank the board.
Okay.
Glad we could do it for you.
Yeah.
All right.
You wanna ride?
Yeah, if you could. I walked down.
Be a test drive in the truck.
I'm not driving yours.
No, I'm gonna drive, believe me.
All right, zoning board of appeals is next.
Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow.
And so far to date, they are below budget.
Is it like a 2.23%?
I just had, the question I had on that is, most of the other budget, department budgets have a 2.25% or 2.5% range. This one is almost 4%. Are they exempt from this, that typical 2.25% increase? Have you noticed how most of the other budgets have like 2.25 or 2.45? And that was just a question I had, why is this one almost 4% versus the other?
So,
And maybe Debbie will have an answer
so
to that.
AFSCME is different.
It's not, you're not talking about significant money, but it was just
Right.
a question that I had.
Well, you try to get the non-union to basically match up pretty close
The
with the
non-union has a
really,
different, it's similar to
kind of
some
same,
degree,
yeah.
but it's the last year of that AFSCME contract is.
Yeah, we don't have a comparison, but it could be
Oh,
a
what?
step as well.
Yeah, Debbie, I don't know, would you know on the zoning board of appeals budget, it's not a large amount, but I noticed just on almost every other budget went up like 2.25% to 2.5% range.
just said.
This one is, is that what you were asking?
that was, yeah.
I'm sorry, then I
That's-
didn't hear
no.
you. That one is up, is about almost 4%. I was
You're
wondering.
talking about the $375
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
administration, so that's a AFSCME bargaining unit position in year 3 of that contract. Their
Okay.
comp schedule's a little bit different, than the non-union. The new hire, step was dropped, the steps slide over, and then, the new step 5 is added on. So when they go to the
Okay.
next step, it's like they skipped a step
Okay.
from that last year.
It just was like all the other budgets are the
So you'll see
same,
a little
yeah.
variation on anyone that would be in that union.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm fine with that.
Zoning board used all their money last year, they had $6.85 left.
I'll make a
Right.
motion that we approve.
Okay, Paul,
A second.
Sharon. I notice they have 2 revolving accounts. Is that correct?
So they have a revolving account that's.
Filing
a
fees
44
and
fee.
consultants.
So that one, so one of them, is in the town meeting bylaw that we created last year. And, that is to be used, I guess, for, technical assistance.
Yeah, is used for all receipts from filings and associated applications. Fees shall be deposited, et cetera, et cetera.
For engineering.
Yeah, professional engineering, legal, and other case-related items.
For that, so if somebody files an application for a special permit and the ZBA wants a peer review done of it, the taxpayers, the budget, are not gonna pay for that. The applicant pays for that indirectly through this process. So their filing fee will cover peer review, that's review on behalf of the zoning board. Usually they go to Larry Graham, the planning board's engineer, to review the engineering work of the applicant's engineering work. And they use the revolving fund to do that.
So, I guess a follow-up question, in the Article 16 last year, it said that the ending balance as of February 2017 was $10,212. They can't spend more than $4,000 under the bylaw, so what happens with the extra $6,000? Because
It just sits
it
there.
could keep on growing, does that eventually get?
Yeah,
does
no,
that-
unless town meeting transfers it out.
So, but you could transfer it back
Town
into
meeting.
free cash or whatever, right?
Town meeting could transfer it out and appropriate it or something.
Yeah, okay, but they can't spend more than 4. It seems like they're.
That's capped, and I'm not sure what the logic was with the 4,000. This has been on the books maybe 10 years at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah.
But if they increase that, would that reduce their operating budget? Could they reduce that, or?
Well, I think it's really geared for the hiring of professional assistants. And maybe, it's used for newspaper ads.
Yeah, because they don't have much income, it looks like they only generated 1,000 and expended 362, so that's probably an average year or whatever, so it's not like it's gonna grow
Yeah,
a lot,
I mean,
but,
they're a board that, their purpose is, to listen to the applications for building inspector appeals, variance, they have I think a couple of special permits out of the zoning bylaw, so their things are really, mostly it's applications, and the applicant's fee covers the cost of all the work, the legal ad, the notice to abutters mailing, and things like that, and any technical assistance. So they might have some other things that they're doing that they use their expense budget for, that would be,
yeah, but if we had to cut, any budgets this year or whatever, I mean, that might be a
Yeah.
small source of money that we
they
could.
have $1,680, so they have a phone, they have, office expenses. And I think their breakout shows what they spend their money on.
Yeah, so
So you might-
1680.
You may have some, subscriptions, telephone, meetings, seminars, workshops, maybe some of the ZBA members go to, like, Merrimack Valley Planning Commission has citizen trainer cooperative planning. Not sure, you can ask John Thurston.
Well, the main thing is office supplies, and then subscriptions, 300. Meeting seminars, is 250. Okay, any other questions? I think we have a motion and a second. All we need to do is vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, zoning board of appeals. Brad Street and Dodge Properties.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Sharon
I'll second.
and Paul second. Any discussion on the amounts or anything? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Hydrants, decrease.
Yeah, I had a question on
I
that.
don't
That's such a
think I did.
huge decrease. Was that transferred from another to another?
That's
No.
just reduced by the
Nope.
water department.
No,
They're
Right.
trying to go back to the way it was.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's
I
a,
think that's a
Which
good
was
move.
what? I'm just trying to understand why they dropped so much.
Because it used to be, they charge us to offset things we have, the town has to have them pay for, back and forth, and then Mary Beth wanted it to be a money-making proposition, as I understand it. And
it
the,
used to be 14 for a long, long time.
yeah,
too,
and the,
right?
board members didn't feel that they should be charging the town a lot of money, especially in this year, and so they reduced it.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to accept the hydrant.
okay. Dennis? Have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
So does that mean if we're paying, if they're paying the town, then does that mean that the people on the, who are paying the water bills are paying more money then?
No,
If they
they're
don't-
dropping the line entry
Yeah,
from
but the,
53,000 to,
yeah, but I know, but that's just a make-believe number as far as the hydrant expenses. They can make whatever they want it to be. So if they're saying that it's gonna be less, per hydrant to do,
They may have.
then
Yeah, I mean theoretically, yes, the
Uh,
customers would be
they're
paying
paying
for it
more.
in an absolutely balanced budget type of a thing. But if there is a surplus, then there's just less of a surplus.
I think they're
So-
reviewing their budget, and they're looking at each line item and say, this is too high, or too low, or whatever.
Well, yeah,
So they've made an adjustment, I'm assuming, throughout the budget. They got a $2 million budget, so
I hope they make adjustment on our rates too.
why don't they
eventually,
make that a
know?
line item in the water department budget?
Because
it-
it's a
They have it
town.
as separate?
It goes as a separate article
it's a
with
bill
the
to
town,
us.
bill,
Yeah, it's income for them, so they're writing a bill.
Okay.
It's not part of their operating budget, per se. Well, it is, because it's
Yeah.
income coming in just like paying your water bill,
It'll be interesting to see when we get the water budget.
We should,
That's gonna
we're
be-
working on that, they should, get a meeting tonight, the water board, and
Right.
and we're supposed to be reviewing their last draft, so I should get it by email. They're gonna come in next week and they wanna have a joint meeting.
Can we get that budget as soon as possible,
Yes.
because I know it's.
There
gonna
was
be a
some,
big one.
data they wanted to clarify with the accounting, and they weren't able to do that today, so I think that it should be tomorrow or Thursday at the latest, I'll get that to you. They would like a joint meeting next week.
Okay.
With,
But, we're probably gonna have, I'm working with the fire chief, highway, water probably at the end of the meeting or early in the meeting, I don't know when
is this
they want.
Monday night you're talking about?
Tuesday night.
Tuesday night,
Tuesday.
our meeting on
Oh,
Tuesday
Water
night.
will
Yeah,
be-
it'll be the same
Yep.
thing on Monday night for me with the selectmen's meeting, I gotta book these, but I don't know what your preference is.
Maybe the water
When you say
last,
joint, does that mean you have the
because I
selectmen?
think that would be the
still in it?
longest
No, no, no,
discussion,
water.
have the
Oh,
water
the water
budget.
board, oh,
Instead
the
of holding up the other
Probably
groups.
so,
Yeah,
yes.
I listened to their meeting,
at the end.
Peter, and they said that because they don't have a superintendent this year, that they felt they could better explain it if you had all three commissioners here to put the input in.
Yeah, well, what's her name wasn't really very, familiar with the jargon sometimes, with the budget stuff,
Well, they've been working very, very hard on it this year. They've never had to put one completely together before
Yeah.
that, I don't believe.
So was there a preference on the time, though, if we had the fire chief the whole way?
I would think they
Some other, we're gonna have a lot of other
Let
budgets.
the
and
water
trying to-
last, because that
Council
would
on
be,
Aging
is-
is-
Right.
don't hold the others hostage.
Yeah, I would say that for
And-
meetings with ones, that we would put them last,
Okay. So we'll have,
because I'm
Council on
sure
Aging
that's gonna have the
probably
most questions.
will- Okay.
Yeah.
that's-
Yeah.
I was thinking that, but I don't wanna assume.
And you won't hold the other groups up.
Yeah.
Right.
when
Yeah.
they- yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's see, Personnel Advisory Committee was not on the schedule.
It's not on the schedule, I'm
Right.
sorry.
That's all right.
What's today's date?
I actually had a
Six.
couple of budgets I thought I put on.
Okay. Okay, so,
So 13.
excuse me, next meeting will be the 13th,
Yep.
7:15.
Make a
That's
motion,
a long meeting.
make a motion to adjourn?
Have a motion,
A second?
I'll second. I hope there's no discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.